From one unstable government to another, let's talk about North Korea. Their supreme leader Kim Jong Un seems to be unhappy. He's dismissed his top military general and he's called for the mass production of weapons and equipment. Kim said the same thing last weekend as well. He went on a tour of multiple weapons factories and perhaps decided that his top general was not doing enough to boost firepower. So he's brought back an old face. A former chief of general staff is back at the helm in Pyongyang. His name is Yong Gil. He has served as the top general twice before, also as defense minister and social security minister. Yesterday's reshuffle is the latest in the merry-go-round that is North Korea's government. Our next report tells you what it means.
If there's one thing that's certain, it's that a Kim will be leading North Korea. But that's about the only thing that's certain when it comes to North Korean politics. Because the present Supreme Kim Jong Un, is known to be a bit temperamental. He's quick to dismiss senior leaders and keep shuffling his deck of generals every few months. That's exactly what took place yesterday. Kim Jong Un held a meeting of North Korea's Central Military Commission. The country's state media released pictures of the affair. Cigarette in hand, Kim blew smoke on North Korea's current military order and decided he wanted an overhaul. General Park Soo-il is out. He barely lasted 7 months. It seems his work didn't please Supreme Leader Kim. Looks like Kim has some grand plans. Plans that seem similar to what he always says, but somehow this time it's different. Kim issued a diktat during the meeting. He wants a boost in weapons production, an expansion of military drills, and more preparations for the possibility of war. This call for military readiness comes on the heels of his latest factory tour. Between last Thursday and Saturday, Kim took stock of North Korea's weapons factories. He conducted his inspections clad in a white coat with white pants that take you back to the disco era and a jaunty white cap. In this imposing attire, Kim was shown test-firing some rifles. He was surrounded by military personnel, some of whom were in uniform, others who were inspired by Kim's summer wardrobe. So the rigorous military inspection looked like a crossover between a Korean Miami Vice and Full Metal Jacket. And whatever this enigmatic inspection revealed, it can't have been good news for the top general. Now we know General Park Soo-il has been booted, but that's all we know for now. By design, North Korean state media is rarely very informative. But what it has told us is the name of the new top commander. It's Vice Marshal Yong Gil. Or should we say, it's Yong Gil again. This man has been around the block a few times, and maybe even escaped the chopping block. We'll come to that in a moment. Ri has served as the chief of the General Staff of the Korean People's Army twice before, reportedly from August 2013 to January 2016, and from June 2018 to September 2019. We should clarify that this is to the best of our knowledge. North Korea isn't known for sharing accurate information. But if true, this means Ri served as the top general for almost 4 years. That's almost twice as long as anyone else. You see, top generals don't really last long on the Kim Jong-un carousel. As we mentioned, the newly demoted Park lasted for about 7 months. His predecessor lasted for 6. The one before that, 9 months. So you can see the top military job isn't for those with a long-term career in mind. But it seems Ri has the Supreme King's favor. He's been given a 3rd chance to helm North Korea's armed forces. Second to Kim, of course, but it's an important position nonetheless. One that reportedly almost got him killed after his first stint. In 2016, South Korea had reported that Ri had been executed. Seoul said the then general was killed for corruption and forming a political faction. But it turns out Ri was just sacked, not shot. Either South Korea's information was incorrect, or he found a way to appease the overlord Kim. Since then, he has served as North Korea's social security minister and then its defense minister. And it seems the Supreme Kim has turned to him once again to oversee more weapons production, military drills, and war preparation. And military parades, of course. After sharing the news about Ri's promotion, North Korean media spoke about the new parade coming up. It's on September 9th. But Ri has his task cut out. If he fails, who knows where Kim Jong Un's cabinet carousel will fling him next.
Our next story comes from the South American nation of Ecuador, a country of about 17 million people. Its capital city is called Quito, and it has been rocked by an assassination. A presidential candidate has been shot dead at a campaign rally. 9 others were injured. One suspected assassin was also killed. He succumbed to injuries from a shootout. 6 other suspects have been arrested. A criminal gang has claimed responsibility for the assassination. It's called Los Lobos. It means the wolves. This is the second largest gang in Ecuador. It is affiliated with the Mexican drug cartel. The assassination comes days before the presidential election. It's scheduled for the 20th of August. The outgoing president, Guillermo Lasso, said the killing was a clear attempt to sabotage the election. He has promised that polls will go ahead as planned, but amid a national state of emergency. Here's a report.
The South American nation of Ecuador has been rocked by violence of late. And last night, the violence claimed another victim. This is Fernando Villavicencio. He was one of the leading candidates for the upcoming presidential election. But late last night, he was assassinated.
I was behind my brother, and at that moment, it was like a glowworm of bullets. A friend that was with me was also shot, and I said, I'm going to talk with Fernando. It was like 100 shots, like lights. I went to a bathroom vent, crawling. The shooting lasted for long.
Villavicencio was killed while leaving a campaign rally. He was leaving a school building when he was shot. Multiple bullets were fired. One of the suspects, reportedly the shooter, was killed as well. Ecuadorian authorities have arrested 6 other suspects. This was after raids around the capital, Quito. Now, a gang has claimed responsibility for the murder, Los Lobos. It's the second largest gang in Ecuador and counts 8,000 among its ranks. Ecuador's outgoing president said it was an attack on the democratic process.
Este es un crimen político.
This is a political crime. It has the character of terrorism, and we do not doubt that this murder is an attempt to sabotage the electoral process.
El proceso electoral.
Villavicencio was campaigning on an anti-corruption platform. He was also a vocal critic of the drug cartels that have been taking over Ecuador, and he had warned that they wanted him out of the way.
The
country knew through the media of a police report in which it's revealed a very serious threat of one of the Sinaloa cartel's boss, I'm referring to alias Tito, against me and my campaign team. There was a warning that if I kept referring to him and his structure, they would attack me or my life. Drug traffickers and the mafia want to take the political power of the state. And without a doubt, it's not Tito who's behind this threat. It's the political mafias that are behind Tito who is behind this threat against my candidacy.
He said a prominent member of the Sinaloa Mexican cartel was behind threats to his life. But the gang which claims it assassinated him is affiliated to another cartel. Los Lobos have ties to the Jalisco New Generation cartel. It just shows that Villavicencio made a lot of enemies among Ecuador's gangs. Drug cartels from Mexico and Colombia have been operating in Ecuador in recent years. And Ecuador has become a battlefield for the foreign drug cartels. They use the country's Pacific ports to transport drugs to the US and beyond. The cartels lend their support to local gangs like Los Lobos, and these gangs are behind the rising violence in Ecuador. Last month, the mayor of a port city was assassinated. A national emergency was declared because of this. A mayoral candidate in another city was murdered as well. A second emergency was declared last month due to violence within prisons. And now, a third has been put in place to ensure the election goes on as planned.
The
second decree is a declaration of a state of emergency for 60 days. From this moment, the armed forces will be mobilized in the whole national territory to guarantee the security of citizens, peace of the country, and free and democratic election on the 20th of August, just like the National Electoral Council has foreseen.
8 people were running for Ecuador's presidency. Now there are 7. Some of the candidates have decided to stop campaigning as a mark of respect for the slain Villavicencio. But to truly respect the fallen candidate, the next president must ensure that his assassins are brought to justice, that gangs like Los Lobos are eradicated, and the brazen violence tearing Ecuador apart is put to an end.
In 2022, a man from Ohio shot his neighbor. Why? Because he was a conservative and he thought that his neighbor was a Democrat. This is a tragic case, but it's not an isolated one. This is the story of America today. It is more polarized than ever before, and frankly, it has been like that for quite some time. Political violence is not new, but in the US, it has been at an all-time high since 1970. Since 2021, 39 people have been killed because of political violence. And the numbers are only rising. Our next report tells you about America's growing political violence and how the US is more divided than ever before.
Butler County 911, where's your emergency?
My name is Kristen King.
All right, Kristen.
My husband was just shot.
That was Kristen King calling 911. Her next door neighbor had come over. Sounds like an everyday thing, right? But then the unthinkable happened. Her neighbor shot her husband in the backyard. Why? Because the neighbor was a conservative and he believed her husband was a Democrat. Political violence in America is not new, but it's definitely on the rise. This case was, however, not the only one. There have been 200 more across the US since 2021, an indication that the country is more divided than ever. The rhetoric surged mostly during the Trump era. It reached a peak after the 2021 Capitol riots. Donald Trump lost the 2020 election. He falsely claimed that the vote was stolen, and many of them still believe it.
Take that house! Take it now!
Many hoped that by 2024, things would cool down, that the rhetoric would die down. But it has only become more heated. The violence has killed at least 39 people, roiled aspects of American life, disrupted gatherings, and turned neighbors into enemies. Some of these deaths followed one-on-one disputes, like this fatal brawl in Florida. The two men were arguing over Trump. Others happened at public gatherings, like the mass shooting in Portland. A Reuters investigation tracked violence in America, and here are the figures. Since 2021, there have been 213 cases of political violence. 2/3 of those cases were physical assaults and/or even confrontations. A third involved property damage, and 76 were individual acts of violence, aka lone assailants. This is not the first time America has seen political violence. It surged in the 1970s. 1970 alone saw more than 450 cases. But that was different. In 1970, American political violence focused largely on destroying property. There were attacks on government buildings, bombings. The idea was not to kill people. But today, it's very different. Political violence has surged to its highest levels since 1970. And the main target are people. There have been 14 fatal political attacks since the Capitol riots. 13 of them were right-wing and 1 was on the left. So the people who commit the violence are divided, but so is the violence that is committed. There have been mainly 2 types of violence. Fatal violence, like killings and shootings, which are mostly associated to those on the right. Then there is property violence, burnt cars, damaged property, and they are perpetrated more by people on the left. So America is in a very divisive period. Its political rhetoric pitching people against people, neighbor against neighbor. The US has always had political opponents, but they are no longer divided by their views on issues. Instead, you have people on both sides demonizing each other, calling each other traitors, and in the worst case, even killing each other. America is in the grips of unprecedented political violence, its worst since 1970. And it's unlikely to change anytime soon. "10,000 steps a day. It's touted as the minimum for good health.
It has long become a default fitness goal, so much so that it birthed a whole industry. An industry worth about $20 billion. It's filled with fitness trackers, smartphone apps, even wellness programs. But do you follow this number religiously? Do you walk 10,000 steps every day? Probably not. How do we know? Because we have the numbers. Indians typically walk around 4,300 steps in a day. Americans 4,800 steps. The Japanese take 7,000 steps. Australians and Swiss nationals come close. They take some 9,000 steps. This is the average. So chances are you're not clocking in 10,000 steps every day. But there is no need to feel discouraged. I'll let you in on a secret. 10,000 steps is a myth. The number to stay healthy is far lower than that. Let alone half of 10,000, even 2,000 steps are good for you. But if that's the case, why is the world being told otherwise? Blame murky historical roots. Let's take you back to the year 1965. That's when a Japanese company launched a pedometer. You know the instrument that records the number of steps taken? It estimates the distance traveled on foot. This Japanese pedometer was called 10,000 step meter. It also came with a slogan, let's walk 10,000 steps a day. What fun. And hence we had the magic number, 10,000 steps. It became trendy. It gave people a distant, sweaty goal, the goal of a fit and healthy body. It became part of everyday conversations, even corporate team building exercises. But you see, this goal is not based in a scientific study. It originated in marketing, not medicine. So what does medicine say? How many steps should you walk in a day? A new global study is out now. It was conducted by the Medical University of Lords and the Johns Hopkins University. It shows that 2 to 5,000 steps, in fact, are beneficial. About 2,300 steps is enough to benefit the heart and blood vessels. At 4,000 steps, the risk of dying prematurely of any cause starts reducing. And with every extra 1,000 steps after 4,000, the risk of dying early reduces by 15%. So basically, there is no one number. The more you walk, the more health benefits you get. This applies to people of all genders, ages, and countries. Such betrayal, right? All this time, people were beating themselves up for walking lesser than 10,000 steps. Some say they don't even bother going for a walk, assuming they won't reach the magic number, so what's the point? But with this study, it's clear that there is a point. Walking 10,000 steps definitely helps, but so does every little bit of walking. It's about small snippets of movement throughout the day, like walking from one room to another or getting up from your desk to get coffee. They all add up to make a difference. Let me show you how. Walking lowers blood pressure, strengthens muscles, protects bones, increases energy levels, boosts happy hormones like endorphins, and this benefits mental health. The best part is, walking is for everyone because it is low impact and easy on the joints. But walking is not the only light exercise that helps. I'm talking about non-exercise activities, meaning simple tasks that use energy, like carrying shopping bags, washing the floor, pacing while talking on the phone. It's ironic, but think of exercising as eating your favorite food. Even a little is good. But more is always better. After all, insufficient physical activity is responsible for more than 3 million deaths every year. It's the 4th most frequent cause of death worldwide, not enough physical activity. It increases the risk of heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and several cancers. And yet people do not exercise enough, and the numbers agree. 1 in 4 adults and 4 out of 5 adolescents do not get enough physical activity. Now, exercising may seem daunting. There is rarely enough time or energy to get started, but remember that good health can be a sum of the small movements. Movement in any form should not be underestimated. So set a goal that works for you. Find your own sweet spot of step count, or throw out your tracker entirely, but just get moving. What makes a good politician? Policies, yes. Oratory, yes. But what about looks? For the longest time, leaders were supposed to look ordinary, like an average Joe. But that's not the case anymore. Today's politicians are splurging on hair and makeup, and the bills are eye-wateringly big. Germany has released some numbers. Their government has spent $68,000 on Chancellor Olaf Scholz's hair and makeup. $68,000, that's around 56 lakh Indian rupees on hair and makeup. We have 4 months left in this year, so expect that bill to increase even more. Now, hair and makeup is just one part of it. The total expenditure is much higher, around $1.6 million in 2022. Imagine that, $1.6 million for makeup, hairdressers and photographers. Now, before you ask, this is for the entire German government, not just Olaf Scholz. But still, it's a big number. Even Angela Merkel's makeup bill is borne by the government. She retired from politics in 2021. Since then, guess how much money Germany has spent on her makeup? Around $60,000. Private events, public events, it doesn't matter. The German government picked up the tab. What do the people make of this? The German Taxpayers Association has criticized the bills. They said it should be at a bare minimum, and yet nothing has changed. In fact, the bills are rising even more. The German government's makeup bill was 80% higher in 2022, 80% higher in 2022 compared to 2021. And Germany is not alone in this trend. World leaders apparently love their makeup. French President Emmanuel Macron is one example. He was elected to office in 2017. In the first 3 months, listen to this, he spent $30,000 on his makeup. That's around 19 lakh rupees in 3 months. So the next time you see Macron's youthful, wrinkle-free face, remember this, it costs $30,000. The whole thing triggered a backlash. Macron ended up promising to cut his makeup budget. His predecessor spent even more. That's François Hollande. He used to pay his hairdresser $10,000 per month. It's bad enough for most people. Even worse if you're a socialist leader. Donald Trump did something similar. He spent around $10,000 for makeup for his inauguration. But I must say, Trump got a better deal. He got makeup for himself and 20 of his aides. Ireland too had a makeup-savvy leader, Bertie Ahern. He was Prime Minister from 1997 to 2008. His makeup bill was released in 2006, around $100,000 for 4 years. In fact, Bertie Ahern was called the L'Oreal Prime Minister. We tried to find numbers in India as well. I'm sure you're thinking about those. Unfortunately, there is no public record. But the bigger question is this: why do leaders do this? Why do they spend tens of thousands of dollars on makeup? I'm sure the reasons are different for everyone, but press coverage is a common one. You have high-definition cameras following you. They can capture everything, a wrinkle on your face, a strand of grey hair, a pimple, all of it. So makeup is the only way to appear perfect, to look youthful on television. If you don't, the cameras will spot it. Look at what happened with Joe Biden earlier this year. People noticed some odd marks on his face, and immediately questions were raised. The White House had to clarify that the president uses a sleep apnea machine. Maybe Biden needed a makeup artist to cover it up. And let's be clear here, makeup is not the problem. People are free to use cosmetic products or employ hairdressers. It's their choice. The problem is, who pays for it? It's one thing to pay for a leader's motorcade or housing. It's another to pay for their makeup, especially when the bills are so high. In the US, women spend around $15,000 on makeup. That's over a lifetime. $15,000. In Indian money, it's around 12 lakh rupees. But some world leaders are spending as much in months. So clearly, it is excessive. We do need active and caring politicians. For that, taxpayers will pick up the tab. But if they want to splurge on looks, I'm afraid it's BYOM. Bring your own makeup. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. We're starting with the United States. Tourists' paradise Hawaii has become their nightmare. Massive wildfires have broken out. The historic town of Lahaina has been completely devastated. At least 36 people have been killed. Some jumped into the ocean to escape the wildfire. Meanwhile, Formula One world champion Max Verstappen has picked up some new driving tricks. And the United Kingdom had this: a baby elephant rolled in the grass and spent some quality time with its mother. Finally, what makes the 10th of August significant? On this day in 1962, Marvel Comics superhero Spider-Man made his debut. He appeared in the comic book called Amazing Fantasy. This was when Peter Parker came into our lives as a shy and nerdy high school student who secretly fought bad guys. Youngsters loved it. And the rest, as they say, is history. We're leaving you with that. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
This was a home.